Okay, Chair, when you're ready, we're now live on YouTube. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Debbie. Good morning and welcome to East Devon District Council's Asset Management Forum meeting on Monday, the 4th of December 2023. I'm your Chair, Councillor Paul Hayward. Hello, everyone who's watching. I'd like to welcome anyone watching the meeting via the live streaming. May I remind members that the Code of Conduct applies throughout this meeting. We also reserve the right to remove and disconnect any participant who is disrupting the meeting by whatever means. Hopefully that won't be necessary. Please turn any telephone devices you have to off or to silent. In the event of a break in the internet connection, please bear with us as we try to reconnect. After 15 minutes, if we have not been able to reconnect, we will consider the meeting adjourned and reconvene at a later date. We'll now start the meeting by doing a roll call of those forum members here present. Debbie, over to you.
Thanks, Chair. Let's start with yourself, Councillor Hayward.
I'm here, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Davey.
I am here, but I'm afraid I've got to go at 10 o'clock because I've got another meeting which clashes.
Okay, thanks for letting me know. Councillor Hall.
Present.
Great, thank you. And Councillor Olive.
Present.
Great, thank you very much. Councillor Arnott's given his apologies, so back to you, Chair. You are quorate.
Thank you very much indeed. Agenda item 1, public speaking. I don't believe we have any members of the public who've registered to speak, not since...
No, we don't, Chair.
No, thank you. Okay, so we'll move swiftly on to agenda item 2, notes of the previous meeting held on the 19th of June 2023. If anyone has any comment on these notes, please do so by raising your electronic hand. If I see no hands raised, I'll take this as an indication that you agree that those minutes are true and fair.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Agenda item, apologies. Agenda item 3, apologies. We've had obviously apologies from Councillor Arnott, which have been noted. Agenda item 4, declarations of interest. If any councillor has any declaration to make, that's a councillor either in the forum or present, please raise your electronic hand. Councillor Hall.
Just to make reference to agenda item 9, because I'm the council's representative on the Exmouth Placemaking Board.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Hall. I see no others, so we'll proceed to agenda item 5, matters of urgency. I have none listed. However, in light of what's going on outside the window at the moment, Axminster is currently underwater. Oh, Councillor Davey, you have a declaration as well.
Yeah, same as Matt, Exmouth Placemaking Forum, and an Exmouth Town Councillor I probably should mention.
No worries. You look very resplendent in your robes, Ollie. I saw those pictures. Nice and warm. Yeah, so Axminster's underwater. A lot of East Devon is. So because of the conditions, if possible, we have 4 updates reports, agenda items 7 to 10 inclusive. And I'd like to, if possible, get through those at a rate of knots. Obviously, that's not going away from if anyone wants to ask questions of the officers concerned, but I'd like those operational officers to be away and actually dealing with tenant and customer inquiries, because we're probably going to have a few rolling in today with the amount of weather we're having. And then we can cover items 11 to 12 in a little bit more depth, which I think is appropriate. So that moves, without further ado, agenda item 6, confidential exempt items. There are no items which officers have recommended should be dealt with in this way. So we swiftly then move to agenda item 7, the place and prosperity update. And we have Alison here to present that report. Thank you, Alison.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Chair. So I will keep this very brief then. You will have seen the report, so I'll just highlight a few things here. The item number 1, the depots review, that's progressing well, reviewing the various depots, operational depots and recycling depot in the district, and we hope to report on that in spring next year. The community asset transfer, we had an application from Ottery St Mary earlier this year, and we did bring a report and consulted with AMF about that. We've been through the process, the procedure on that through the year, consulting with colleagues and others as relevant. We reported to the portfolio holder with our recommendations, which were that we didn't proceed to inviting a business case from Ottery St Mary at this point, but we work with the town council to see how we can help them achieve their aspirations in relation to the site. There were just some issues there regarding that we needed to understand regarding our own land and our own income. Seaton Jurassic is still progressing in terms of entering into an agreement with the tramway, so our team are working on that. And similarly with the public toilets in Sidmouth, with the drill hall, we're continuing to work with Rockfish on that agreement. In terms of the Seaton Moradunham, I'll mention this one. Unfortunately, we didn't receive any offers for Seaton Moradunham from the marketing exercise over the summer. We will be reviewing the outcome of that with our marketing agents and with reporting with ward members and portfolio holder early in the new year to discuss the next steps. So I'll leave it there for now, but happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Are there any questions for Councillor Davey?
Just a quick one, thanks, Alison. We'd had 17 individuals and organisations that expressed an interest in the Seaton Moradunham site, but none came forward with an offer. Do we know any reasons for that?
No, not particularly. No, because we don't receive that feedback. If they're not interested, you know, they don't tell the agent why they're not going to bid. So I suspect it's a challenging site, a challenging building to take on, and we had specifically set the criteria with expectations of a placemaking delivery, retaining the walkway above, for example. And enhancing that. So we had some of our own requirements, which we were expecting of any bidders when they came forward with their proposals. It wasn't just a straightforward, here's a site, what would you like to do with us? Offer us the best price. We had a certain criteria, and whether it was that made people reluctant to bid. But we'll explore that further with the agent. Hopefully that's helpful.
Okay, I can't see any other hands up. Thank you, Alison, and apologies for it wasn't an intention to say, you know, we all have to rush through. But thank you very much for your clarity and conciseness on that report. Again, if any other members do have any questions that occur to them afterwards, please feel free to contact Alison or myself. So we now move forward to agenda item 8, the estates team update, and we have Rob Harrison with us and Councillor Young. Good morning. So you've joined us. Nice to see you. Do you have any declarations of interest? Sorry, Rob, just hold you for a second. Any declarations of interest yet?
No, I haven't got any declarations. Sorry, I was delayed. I had to get back from Honiton through the floods.
Honestly. We're all in the same boat, Jeff. We empathise.
Literally, Rob, boats.
The estates team update. Thank you, Rob.
Yep. Good morning, all. Yeah, just a quick sort of run through of some of the things we've been up to in the past couple of months. So starting off with just a graphic which shows the overall sort of reduction in sort of the ongoing casework, which is a sort of historic backlog that we've had, which now we've got a sort of a full complement of staff we're making significant inroads into. So you can see there's an ongoing downward trend in the overall number of cases, which is promising. In terms of our industrial estate at Millway Rise, we've done a number of lease renewals out there, which have resulted in significant rental increase from the units. And then we have been working with the communications team to get the new asset register onto the website as well. Tim's going to come on to that later on and give to show you where that is, but yeah, that's now available for people to look at in a searchable format. We're undertaking the revaluation of the council's assets at the moment, which is a significant piece of work, and we've just finished the council's annual insurance valuations, which again is a significant piece of work for the team, but quite a significant overall reinstatement value that we're looking at there. So any questions from there?
Lovely. Thank you, Rob. Any questions from members present? I can't see any. No, and Rob, thank you very much for that update. Very much appreciated, and great news for us from a financial perspective. Question from myself: the increases that have been negotiated, particularly at Millway, what's the current sort of mood? Are tenants sort of understanding that it's just necessary, or in some cases, I think legally required due to leases. How are the negotiations sort of? How are you finding them? Is it more difficult?
Yeah, I think in the main, it's like with anything. I think nobody wants their rent to go up, but I think most people, certainly with the Millway ones, we had a constructive negotiation with them. We present our basis of value to people. So it's not like a kind of here it is, this is the answer, end of story type of thing. It is a negotiation. We put our case forward. If people have got their own case to make, then we consider that any sort of evidence that they've got to support what they think, and we work it out from there. So we don't want it to be essentially a confrontation, if you like. We want it to be a constructive negotiation with our tenants, and to try and build those good working relationships with them.
Lovely. Thank you very much for that. So without further ado, we now move to agenda item 9, the Exmouth placemaking update, which is presented today by Jerry Mills. Good morning, Jerry.
Morning, Paul. Thank you, Debbie. Chair, I'll just keep it quite brief. You've had sight of this elements of this report before. So the draft placemaking plan was presented to the placemaking group on the 7th of November. That was a very good meeting with members well engaged, and that has also helped to shape the direction of the final report, which we hope should come forward in January. Where we are in regard to the placemaking plan overall, we're currently writing the strategic outline business case. And then from there, we move on to the investment strategy and to the development briefs. You'll recall, Chair, I'm sure that whenever we got approval for this, which was last December, we said we would come back at the midpoint in the process to members, and that's what we've undertook to do. And that's in fact what we did in November. We did have a bit of a delay getting started, so we're quite pleased with the outcome. It's tantalizingly close because it's starting to get quite tangible, and this is where the numbers can start to look a little bit scary. But what I would say to members is that remember, this is a phased plan over 10 years. So whilst you might look at very big numbers at the outset, these will be in increments, okay? And we will be reevaluating to make sure that we're still getting value for money as we go through. Just as a general overall update, we eventually, hands up, got the additional car park signage installed in early November by Devon County Council. That was one that Ollie raised in March of last year, bewilderingly. In regard to the events, and please, I hold my hand up and say I do not deliver the events. That is done by Caitlin and Kate in the events team. But we had 97 events were scheduled to take place on council land in Exmouth from the 1st of April until the 3rd of November. Of these, 95 events have been held in Exmouth town and seafront area. I always like to give credit where it's due, Chair. Like I said, I don't have a hand in this, but it's great to be able to report fantastic things like that. The big wheel did come, but we were unable to secure the carousel due to illness within the build team. Finally, Chair, just the levelling up for the destination Exmouth Gateway. It's also been renamed recently by Devon County Council as Exmouth Active Travel Improvements. This is essentially Dining Way and the area around the station. So whilst we have had some words with our colleagues in the County Council as to their approach, they have now done a revised consultation. Officers are meeting them next Monday. There's also a public consultation which commences later this week and will stay live until January. I would encourage members, I think I've emailed everybody with the details, all elected members and all staff, the details. I would encourage you to make your representation online and feedback to that consultation exercise. As I said, they did undertake to do further consultation work with it, and I have to be fair, they are now doing that. I think they've also woken up a little bit to the fact that actually we're partners in this, and they need to behave as partners, just as we, of course, would have to do. Chair, happy to take questions. You said to try to keep it brief, but I'm very happy always to take questions.
Thank you, Jerry. I can see, from localised social media activity in the Exmouth area, that it's eliciting a lot of interest and a lot of feedback and commentary, both positive and negative, which is good because, we take on board all these things. So it can't always be a plus side. Councillor Holt, actually, sorry, apologies. Councillor Young, I think you just snuck in first there, and then we'll go to Councillor Holt.
Hi, Jim.
Yeah, thank you for that. Really interesting in the placemaking plans. There's a couple of concerns I have, is that in the text and in the presentation, it does say about providing toilets, providing dog police, parking for camper vans on Orcombe Point. Also more facilities along the Esplanade. There's various concerns with that. One is where we're going to get the money for providing more toilets, and our policy on toilets is that we would be removing some of these. We've also got our concerns about the seawall. There's no protection along Orcombe Point. If it floods, it floods from a storm. If we're going to provide proper, sorry, there's someone at the door at the same time. If we're going to provide parking along Orcombe Point, that is, I presume, on Devon County Council highways, that's going to be a problem. If we provide parking and facilities along there, we haven't got any seawall protection along there, so that would be very expensive. The Mere and the Esplanade, again, if we're going to provide a lot of buildings along there, then we're going to have to provide extra height sea protection walls along there. So all of that needs to be considered. Plus, as I say, the costs with dog police, I don't know where that funding is going to come from, and where the funding is coming from for the extra toilet and changing facilities. Back to you.
Yep, Chair, happy to come back on that. In regard to, sorry, go ahead.
Please do, Jerry.
Oh, sorry, Paul. Thank you. In regard to toilets, that has come forward from the consultation, Jeff. We are aware, obviously, of the plan and the current plan, which is rationalising the provision of public conveniences. On the one hand, this is current council policy. Bear in mind that this is over a 10-year plan, so we could see how that could potentially evolve. There's also not consistent agreement, respectfully, amongst all members as to what the toilet provision should currently be, or what the future needs currently are. In regard to the seawall, again, anything that we're doing will have to have a strategic outline business case. It will have to effectively...
Sorry, I've got to leave the meeting. I've got a flood incident in the village. I've got to go. Bye.
Okay, I'll finish what I'm saying. I'll drop Jeff a little note as well, just to pick it up, if that's okay. In regard to the seawall, I'm acutely aware of the lack of protection at Orcombe Point, but again, all of these things will require a strategic outline business case. They have to stack up financially, and once it's a nice aspiration to put in changing facilities, showers and what have you at Orcombe Point, it's not the first time that this discussion has been had. And just recently, myself and George, who's also on the call, just costed the provision of a water main to that location. Just to put in a water main would cost 70, at the current rate, adjusted for inflation, was £73,000 just for a water main. That doesn't include soils and wastes, obviously, which need to be pumped, because, forgive me without sounding trite, you're right at sea level. The other issue is that is if you put toilets at that location, you need some way of sealing the tanks, so that if they do get inundated in a flood event or a storm event, that we don't actually become the polluter that we're complaining about the water companies being. There's all sorts of complications with that, and there's all sorts of technical issues that would need to be overcome. I'm not in any way being dismissive of Councillor Young's concerns. We take them very, very seriously. The issue of whether or not we do things on DCC land with no seawall protection, again, that will have to be bottomed out, and we're talking about some construction work potentially on the Mere and the Esplanade. I think anything that we do will have to take account of the fact of where the seawall defences currently sit, and we'll have to be behind that, because we have no way of ensuring that protection, particularly with the current beach level dropping as profoundly as it has, and we have a number of buildings there that are having their foundations undermined. We've already had that discussion in fairly open forum. So please, can I stress that there has to be a business case for all of this, but when we're doing a master plan, we have to set out some aspirations. Those aspirations will be refined over time. And I can assure members that this still has to go to a final vote to support it. So it's not by any stretch of the imagination being presented to you as a done deal. This is still the draft plan. Is that okay, Chair?
Thank you very much indeed, Jerry. And if you have a few moments, just drop Councillor Young a short email outlining that. Debbie, to save Jeff and his family any embarrassment, as Jeff seems to have disappeared, would you remove Jeff from the room? If he comes back, he can always rejoin. Thank you.
Absolutely. I'll do that now, Chair.
In case, anyone wanders through in his house in his absence. Matt, over to you.
Thanks, Paul. Jerry, in your opinion, is it now the right time to get us, DC and the Town Council in a room to discuss this and all the proposals? Because in my opinion, this is only going to work if everybody works together. And I think we need to start having those conversations sort of now, but I would appreciate your thoughts on that.
Okay, couple of challenges with that. At the last placemaking group, and it was just verified by Cabinet last week. I just haven't seen the minutes of that. It was agreed to form a steering committee, and that was to take in the inputs from Devon County Council, also Exmouth Town Council. I have a monthly meeting with the chair and the leader tomorrow where we will be discussing what sort of format that will take. I've drafted a terms of reference for it. So we will be attempting to form that steering committee subject to the slight modifications which Cabinet made one evening last week. I agree with you that the only way we're going to make things happen is if we work together. But what we need to do is make sure that we get our agreed position together, as a team. Officers can't do that single-handedly. It will take a number of people to be in the room and quite a bit of pragmatism, I would say, Matt,
Okay, I'll rephrase that then. What would you consider to be the best timeline for that to happen?
Well, it's a work in progress now. I've drafted the terms of reference for the steering committee. It was only agreed by Cabinet last week. So that's being discussed with the leader and the chair of placemaking tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. So I'm trying to do it as quickly as I can in real time.
Yeah, I mean,
but yes, it will happen in the new year. It will come together. We will ask. Inevitably, we will end up asking the County Council for nominations. We'll ask I would suspect the Town Council, though we do already have some representation there in placemaking. What we need to just bottom out is where does it all sit in the grander scheme of things? Because potentially you could have two non-executive bodies, that is non-decision-making bodies, making recommendations. So you could have a steering committee making a recommendation to the placemaking group, who then make a recommendation to Cabinet. We're adding another layer there. I'm all for inclusivity, but we need something that's dynamic enough to actually make it work. Does that help, Matt?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, thanks, Chair. Sorry.
Thank you, Ollie. Just before I bring you in, I can see we've been joined by Councillor Nicholas and Councillor Faithful. Have either of you got any declarations you wish to make at this point? No.
Well, I'm in Ottery St Mary Town Council, but that was for previous.
Yeah, thank you. We've covered that point. Okay, I'm just checking in for the sake of probity. So thank you very much, and welcome both of you for today. Ollie, over to you.
Yeah, Jerry's already kind of covered what I was going to say, which was at Cabinet it was raised that we could end up with two bodies both making recommendations. And the way I would like to see the joint group would be as a kind of forum where we keep each other informed and just kind of ascertain what cooperation we could get. So that could then be fed back to the placemaking group. So that remains the decision-making body, but the kind of forum, as I see it, could come back and say, yes, DCC are on board with this. They've offered this, or they can help with that. So it was just to be able to ensure that we weren't creating two decision-making bodies. Yeah, do you want to come back on that, Jerry? And then I've got to leave.
I think, Ollie, you've summed it up really well there. I mean, what we don't want to create is more bureaucracy and less functionality. We need this to work. And that's profoundly at the core. So whatever body we end up forming, we will shape that in a way that I hope will be sufficiently dynamic and pragmatic, to get us pointing in the right direction and with an agreed agenda that we're all working towards. So that really is very much the aspiration. Chair, happy for Ollie to come back with your permission.
No, that's fine, Jerry. I'm sure you're well aware of that, and it was raised at Cabinet. And I've got to go now. I've got Exmouth Transport Forum, which is going to be discussing the Gateway proposals. So on we go. Bye, everybody.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Gary, thank you very much for that presentation. I know that you do keep all of us very informed as things develop. So yeah, please crack on doing what you're doing. It's a huge project. I think no one can underestimate the work that's going to be involved over, as you say, a decade, could be 2 decades. But it's positive that we're moving in that direction. So thank you, Jerry, for your report. Debbie, just one point of note from a DSO perspective. Obviously, I'm noting here that under each one there is a recommendation to note the report. Are you just happy that we essentially, as we're going through them, that we are noting by rote? Is that okay?
Absolutely, Chair. Yeah, no problem.
Lovely. Thank you very much indeed. So now we move on to agenda item 10, which is the property and FM team update from George. Over to you, sir.
Hello and good morning, everyone. The usual report on these, basically listing what the team has been up to. Nothing really is changed much. The one thing to notice is the compliance is basically improved a lot considerably since the last meeting. We have a new electrical. Well, actually, we have 3 electrical contractors now that replace the one that was failing, and that is made a huge difference. So that's the one thing to notice over there. The level of work that we do stays more or less the same in terms of percentages. In terms of what we do in house, what we do with contractors, and so on. And again, the kind of split between our properties and the LED managed properties is roughly the same. Okay, I have added at the very end another set of information that I haven't provided before, and this is with regards to the maintenance budget that we manage. Okay, we have about 350 and 60,000 worth of revenue budget to look after the buildings, of which something like 57% it is spent on LED properties. Okay, at the moment we have spent about 3/4 of that budget. Okay, and we have just under 1/4 left. The kind of split is showing that we are on target to spend what we said we were going to spend, with LED properties, basically LED managed properties, basically taking most of the budget. The anomaly over there is the public conveniences. They are basically costing us a lot more than we have budgeted for, which is not surprising considering the age and the lack of maintenance in those buildings. Okay, and finally there is a note over there, 2.1, about some policies that we're hoping to adopt in the new year, the asbestos and Legionella policies, and that's really from us. I hope that you had a chance to look at the report and be more than happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you, George. I think there's some very telling and helpful data in there. Councillor Barlow, Ian, over to you.
Good morning. Thank you very much. Thank you for the report. Excellent report. Couple of things. I noticed in Exmouth Withycombe, the change rooms there, you're doing a decarbonisation plan. Do you know what the carbon footprint is? What amount of carbon are they using that we're trying to hope to save with the £113,000? That's question one. The second one, could we have a breakdown on the sports? Obviously, it's a big old chunk of money that we're spending out as a percentage. And I wonder if there's any breakdown you could give us, a little bit more detail as to where that money's going. And the other one is on the toilets, whatever. Obviously, it's my pet hate at the moment. Obviously, double the amount percentage-wise. That equates to about an extra £26,000 a year. I think that's right. I've worked out on your percentages there. I just wanted to confirm that, please.
The first question about the Widdicombe Common, this is basically in relation to the new capital bits that we put in. Okay, so basically we don't know what the footprint is, and part of what we're proposing is to basically find out what the footprint is and basically do something about it. At the moment, that site is run on LPG. And basically the boilers over there are completely knackered. They are 25, 26 years old, so they need replacing anyway. So it is the right time to do this sort of work over there. So we're hoping that we will be in a position to remove the reliance on LPG. Okay, and then add some solar panels and other measures to basically compensate for the lack of that, because obviously everything will be run with electricity, and we need to basically offset that cost. And we're hoping to do that with solar panels. Okay, at the moment we don't know. It is just what we think is going to happen, but it would have to be looked into and so on. Okay, so that's the first question.
Just on that then, would it not be a good thing to do a carbon footprint first? Because obviously, if it's a very low carbon usage, so if it's a changing room, so I presume it's not like you're living in it all the time going on. And I just presume that if it's only being used occasionally, or for an amount of hours a day, I just wonder how much are we actually looking to save with the £115,000 we're doing. I accept you need a new boiler there, but a new boiler is quite cheap. But is the 115 going to give you good value and money for the carbon you're going to save, or could we be better spending that elsewhere in our properties, etc.? Will we get more bang for our buck, for want for a better word?
Possibly, but we don't know that information yet. So we have to go by the do what we need to do, which is to work out everything that needs to happen and all that. And we would be in a position to say, okay, this is going to work out or not. Okay, therefore, this is the way we're going to go. So obviously, we are not going to go for something that is going to cost, an arm and a leg, and still not achieve what we're hoping to achieve. So if what comes back is that the best option will be to replace the boilers with the same, okay, that's what we'll do. Okay, but we have to basically do that design work first in order to determine what we're going to do. Okay, this is not.
Yeah, if you need a hand on that, all I'm saying is there are people certainly in Sidmouth, the capital project, whatever, that would happily come down and do a carbon footprint for that building, save you a load of time and effort. If that would be helpful, just let us know.
Well, we need to replace the boilers anyway, so it is something that needs to be done together at the same time. So we will basically take that on if that budget is approved, obviously, in the capital panel.
Thank you, George.
On Thursday.
That in itself is probably a discussion for DSCAP on Thursday. That we teased out then.
Yeah.
And then I think Ian, you had another question for George on the actual the approximate pound value of that percentage for the toilets.
It's roughly about double the amount that we were planning to spend. Okay, so it is what it is. We're trying to keep the toilets open. The toilets they fail constantly. It might be small repairs, but it all adds up at the end. The budget that we have to start with is not huge, to be honest. Okay, so perhaps it is a little bit kind of I wouldn't say that it hasn't been considered properly, but our budgets, for example, last year budget was only increased by 3%. Okay, so inflation was
10%.
Okay, so well, actually more than that. Is depending what you look at, is 18 or 22%. So it is a challenge. Okay, we're doing our best to keep the toilets open. You know, we've had storms, we have all sort of things happening, and that obviously have an effect. Does that answer your question?
Yes, that's fine. I just want to confirm it that again, when you put down double the amount you wanted to spend, looks really, really bad. It's actually £26,000, which I know is a big old chunk of money, but not when you look at £5 million quid to upgrade them. Anyway, thank you very much, George. Well done, and keep working, because I know it's very difficult with the budget you've got. You had another question about sports facilities. Well, all I wanted to say is if we could have a little bit more of a breakdown. It's just that obviously 48%. I just wonder where that money mainly goes to. I presume it is the big sports centres that you sit. Yeah, you mean per site? Okay. So if you look at there is a chart over there. Okay, item 1.10. Okay, yeah. And you could spot over there the properties with the highest number of repairs. Okay, so if you look at the blue is the contractors' work, and the orange is our work. Okay, in-house work. Okay, so yeah, you're right. It is, for example, Exmouth Leisure Centre is the biggest swimming pool we've got. That takes quite a lot of the budget. Okay. And then all the swimming pools are more or less in the same kind of situation. Okay. Thank you very much. That will give you an idea, but I could give you precise amounts if that's what you need. I'll work it out. Thank you very much. Okay. Cheers.
Thank you, Ian. Are there any other questions for George? Okay, in which case, thank you very much for, again, a very informative report. And we'll let you crack on, because I'm sure you've got enough work to do at the moment. Thank you very much indeed, George. We now move to agenda item 11, the portfolio overview. And Rob, you're going to present on this for us.
Yeah. Yep. So just to start off with, so the purpose of this report is to try and give members a greater understanding of the makeup of the let portfolio and where our income comes from. As Tim will come on to in the next item, these two items kind of link together, so it's quite good that they follow one another in the agenda. So as Tim will come on to, though, it's really important for us all to have that greater understanding of how the portfolio is made up and where it best performs, and perhaps where it doesn't best perform. So again, just to re-emphasize, this report just relates to let properties, so it's not like our council offices and things like that, which are part of our wider asset base. You know, kind of this is just the let portfolio. So in terms of starting off, you can see there's a chart which shows the income that we get each year, so our total rent roll, and you can see that that's gradually increased over the past few years. So it's a steadily sort of upward trend, and then what we've done for the report is to try and split the let portfolio into different categories. So we've got our industrial properties, our cafes and kiosks, the investment property, the East Devon Business Centre, our sports and activity clubs, properties with a rent of greater than £15,000, and then a category of other. Now the other is kind of everything else lumped in. I know it sounds fairly general, but we'll come on to that as we go through. So in terms of the rent split, in terms of the portfolio split, you can see that actually that other category makes up quite a significant chunk of our portfolio. So you know, the other categories make up sort of around about a third of the overall portfolio, with other accounting for 2/3 of it. And then as you move on, you can see that actually when you get into a rent split, it's a totally different picture. And actually that other category, whilst accounting for 65% of our properties, actually only brings us in 14% of our overall income. So we're actually committing quite a significant resource to a segment of the portfolio that actually brings us in quite a low income. So again, it's quite an important thing to bear in mind there. We've then got a split, you can see in the bar chart by sort of the individual categories there. You can see obviously industrial is our sort of our highest performing or highest income generating category, with the other properties over 15,000 bringing in the next highest amount. So what I've then done is we've split them out into the individual categories, just to try and talk in a little bit more detail about each individual category. So you've got the industrial portfolio, and as you can see, we've got 64 properties spread over 9 sites, made up of a different types of things. So we've got our industrial units, we've got various sort of open storage compounds that we let, and we've got our ground leases, which are sort of typically, you know, long leases, let for people to essentially build buildings on and things like that. So but again, they make up our industrial portfolio. And as you can see, as you go through, in terms of the actual makeup, so the units make up 69% of the category, and when you then look at the rent and how that sort of splits out, it's largely in proportion in terms of with the number of properties as well, if that makes sense. So you know, there's a sort of a correlation in terms of the income against the number of properties there. In terms of the individual estates, we've split it out by individual industrial estates, so you can kind of see the how each one performs. So you've got obviously things like Riverside bringing in quite a big chunk of the income, whereas some of the smaller industrial estates like Marpool or the compounds at Riverside only bring us in quite a small amount of money each year. So we then move on to the cafes and kiosks. So in terms of our cafes and kiosks, we have 18 of these. They're mainly in seafront locations, so largely in a kind of in fairly prominent positions. We again, as Tim will come on to in the asset management planning work, you know, there's probably a role in terms of, you know, considering whether the positions of these are right, whether the provision is right, and what the purpose that we're holding them for is. But yeah, you can see from there that there's quite a split in terms of the income's fairly well split out. There's a couple which bring us in sort of bigger chunks, and then you can see that the income from this category has increased, sort of steadily over the past 3 years, which again is a positive trend, and we've got future rent events coming up, which we'd anticipate will continue that trend as well. We've got, as I said, we've only got one investment property, so there's not much to say about that one. We've got the business centre. Hopefully everyone's aware of the East Devon Business Centre in Honiton, which provides sort of 19 little office units that we let as serviced office accommodation, and is also used in providing some of our corporate functions at the moment as well. With that one, what we've done is try to look at the rental income that we get at the moment, but also what, because it's not fully let, and obviously if we can get it fully performing, you can see that actually there would be a lot more in terms of potential rental income that we could derive from that. So so again, it comes back to looking at strategies in terms of how to get those assets best performing for us. The sports and activity clubs, again, there's a question, I suppose, with the sports and activity clubs. They don't bring us in a huge amount of income, only 4% of our overall rent roll, but they are quite intensive in terms of the input that we have in them. And again, as part of the asset management plan work, is probably something that we want to look at in terms of how we provide these facilities, and also what our involvement should be in this. Are we the best, the best place to own these? Should it be sort of the towns and parishes? Should it be the clubs themselves? What's the best route to delivering the best facility, I guess? But they are seen as they are an important facility, and they obviously they do bring us in, as I say, a small amount of our overall income there. The property should bring us in income over 15,000. So we split this out because these are kind of the sort of, I suppose, bigger ticket rent items. There's only 9 of them, but they bring us in 21% of our overall rent income. So obviously these are ones that obviously bring us in quite a significant amount of money, and we probably need to develop a bit more of a strategy as to how we make sure that we continue to get the best returns from these ones, and obviously make sure that we're future-proofing that income moving forward, so we're not getting any unexpected surprises. If a tenant was to walk away from one, what's our sort of fallback position and things like that. So then we come on to the other, which is, again, as I said before, it makes up 65% of our portfolio. Now, this is things like leisure centres, it's things like lettings in car parks, it's miscellaneous little buildings that we let out, little garages that we let, sort of concessions on beaches and things like that. So a whole array of the weird and wonderful that councils typically have as part of their portfolio. It is labour intensive. It does take up a lot of resource, and as we've touched on before, it doesn't bring us in a huge amount in terms of our overall income. So in terms of the, as Tim will no doubt take you through, this is probably where the majority of the asset management plan decisions are going to start to focus, because they are probably the more difficult decisions to make, and the things that you need to make some more strategic decisions on, because some of these things will be seen as very important. But in terms of the income, they don't bring us in a lot. So it's going to have to be that kind of clear strategic decision as to why you're holding it, and understanding what the purpose of holding those things is. And then obviously, once you understand all of that, you then move on to measuring that performance better, challenging the ownership of properties, and then reviewing things as well as to how you take them forward from there. So hopefully that's takes people through the report, but happy to either answer any questions now, or there's probably some tie-in with what Tim's going to say in a minute. So there might be things that people want to sort of think about and come back at the end, but happy to take things now or after Tim's spoken as well.
Rob, I think given the sentiments that have been raised in your report, especially regarding the ability of East Devon to sweat our assets and to focus in this era of austerity, assets that actually make us money, and some of them are necessary. Some of them we provide on a social basis, and long continue. Sports and social clubs, we want to encourage them to do their thing because they provide a valuable social benefit. But moving forwards, we have to be more business-like. We have to be more commercially minded. And if you were a purely money-hungry commercial business, some of these you would not keep open. I think that's a given. But we're not. We're a local authority with some moral and social responsibility. So, Ian, what I'm going to suggest, if I may, is that we invite Rob just to stay for a little while and move straight to Tim for item 12, and then we can merge any questions together at the end.
Perfect. Yeah.
Thank you. So thank you very much for that, Rob. We'll now move to agenda item 12, which is going to be presented by Tim Child. Good morning, Tim. And then, as I say, Rob, if you're happy to sort of stay with us and provide any technical information we need as we go from there. Tim, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chair. And don't worry, Rob will be with us until the end of the meeting. So Councillor Barlow will, Rob can help answer any questions if needed later on. Before I move, so the next agenda item is asset management plan. I'm going to present a slide deck. It makes sense if I'm presenting my screen. I'm just going to go slightly off piste, if you don't mind, and just show you the asset register, which Rob mentioned very briefly earlier. So just bear with me. I'm just going to present screen. Okay, so earlier on in the estates team update, Rob Harrison updated on the asset register. There have been previous updates to AMF on this. The public updated version of the asset register has now gone live. Now, I was just very briefly going to show you that. Just one thing I wanted to pick up on before I show you it. There's always been an asset register on our website. So I'm now showing you our property and estates pages on our website, so on the internet. And I'm going to open council-owned assets. So on this page, there is a map, and you can zoom in on any particular location, and it will show you what assets. I'm just picking up Ottery St Mary as just an example, and it will show the assets that we have an ownership interest in. So that has always been there. Nothing has changed. We also have a asset register, which I'm now just going to open. And again, that asset register has always been there. However, it has been not particularly user-friendly. So what we have sought to do over probably the last 9-12 months is to cleanse that data and to present it in a much more usable form. So here is the asset register. So this is a document that members, and indeed any member of the public, can now access. By tidying up the data, we've made it much easier to search for particular assets. So against any of the column headings, you can now search. So we could, for example, search under property type. And let's just say we wanted to look up cafes and kiosks. That was a category Rob talked about earlier. And it comes up with your list of cafes and kiosks. The way we list our assets, there will always be separate land and building assets. So that's why there's sort of a duplication. One's being for the land, one being for the building. If I remove that filter, likewise, you could search by parish or by ward. So let's just say we wanted to look at Beer and Branscombe. That lists all of those assets in Beer and Branscombe. So as I said, this is now available to members as well as to the public. It was always there, but it wasn't anywhere near as user-friendly as it now is. So I would encourage you as members, please, to make use of it. If you've got any particular queries about something within a particular parish or particular ward or a particular type of property, how many car parks do we have, where are our toilets, those sorts of things, I would encourage you to look at that. In addition to this piece of work, there is still one further piece that's needed, which is a non-public version, which will be used to help inform members, and that will utilize what we know as Power BI reporting. Slightly more difficult, much more of a reliance on Strata and our digital team colleagues to help produce, but that work is still in hand. But in the meantime, what you have here I believe is a big move forwards. Probably, I don't know, Chair, would you like me to take any? I don't think there should be any questions, but if I, did you want me to take questions or just move straight on to asset management plan?
If we move straight on to the plan, and we'll have
and then I'll okay. Bear with me. Okay. Okay, rather than spending too much time trying to work out how I can close down the little slide in top right corner, I think I'm just going to make a start, if it's okay. Hopefully you can all see it and it's large enough for you. So, yeah, so asset management planning. So, so this is all about the general fund asset management plan in relation to our land and building assets. So the last asset management plan, which is indeed also on our website, as you'd expect, was for a period 2014 to 2017, so has long expired. With an emerging council plan, leisure strategy, cultural strategy, climate change declaration, increased financial pressures, and references within the financial resilience plan to asset management solutions, together with the significantly improved data that you now have. And in terms of data that you have, just a couple of examples there. So George and our Property and FM team updates, you now have really, really good data in terms of spend, in terms of where we're spending our money, in terms of the properties where the greatest works are being undertaken. You also have the asset register, which I've just shown you online. And you also have the portfolio review that Rob Harrison presented just now. So that's what I mean by much, much better sort of data and intelligence about the portfolio. So in terms of moving forward, we do now need a new asset management plan to help inform decision making, to identify challenges, establish priorities, creating a clear direction, but also deciding what we are not going to do. And for me, that's really, really important. We can't do everything, and an asset management plan and strategy that sits with it is about prioritizing and harnessing that resource into the right work. It did come to, so there was a report on this back in June 2022, very different to the sort of content that you're going to see today, but introducing the principle of a new asset management plan. At that time, we had lots of, this summer last year, we had lots of emerging new strategies, but they weren't at that stage adopted. Now, because of where we are with those policies being adopted, but also the new council plan, together with the increased data intelligence that we have, and also additional resourcing, it makes sense to move forward. And in terms of the Asset Management Forum itself, historically, probably in the absence of anything else to review, the Asset Management Forum has focused much more on individual projects. So how are we progressing with disposal of Morah Dunham site, those sorts of aspects, rather than oversight of the portfolio itself, but also the strategy and direction of travel. Now, we've started to see that shift happening over the last 12 months. As I said, sort of the Property and FM team updates, the portfolio analysis, but I want to sort of take that sort of a step further, if that's okay. And I'm just bear with me. I'm just going to see if I can close down the preview of the next slide. If anyone else knows how to do it, please shout now. If not, I will keep going. I'm relying on my colleagues to step in at this point.
I think you
No.
just continue, Tim.
Yeah, I'll keep going.
Yeah,
I'll keep going.
we can see it on the screen.
I'll keep going. Cool.
Yeah, sorry,
Okay.
Tim. It's a Zoom update. I had the same problem earlier, and I can't give
Yeah,
you a
no,
solution.
Yeah, no, the obvious thing would have been to have tried to remove it, but the danger of trying to do so, not knowing that you're definitely going to succeed, is that it actually makes it even worse. But hopefully it's fine what you've got. You can see it nice and clearly, and I'll obviously share a copy of this after the meeting as well. So,
what I would say, Tim, just to nip in, for any members who are watching on your iPad, you can actually pinch out the screen. So if you are a member watching this and you're on your iPad, simply put your fingers on the iPad screen, pinch it out, and you can make the screen a lot bigger, and you can actually lose that second slide and make the slide that we're actually looking at a lot bigger on the screen. So thank you, Tim. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so why do we need a new asset management plan? Well, as I've said, our current asset management plan expired in 2017. So that's clearly one reason, but things have changed a lot since. So it is around mapping of the future pathway to inform future decisions. There's an analogy here, the 1 in 60 rule. So after 60 miles, a 1 degree error in heading will stray you off course by 1 mile. And an asset management plan, it's all about giving you that heading. You know where you are now, and you know where you want to get to. And again, clearly demonstrates why we need to not only update the asset management plan, but do a fairly fundamental piece of work around it. Straying off course, what might that look like? So as examples, we might be retaining poorly performing assets. We might be not investing at the right time in assets and them deteriorating beyond a state that a simple repair is sufficient. We might not be making the best use of the assets that we have. And there will be many, many more examples of what straying off course would look like. So this slide, I think for me, this is really, really pertinent to what we're talking about today. So there are 3 questions here that I would suggest to fewer people ask those 3 questions. Now I say that in the context of asking the questions about our portfolio within East Devon, but I'm also talking about the public sector more generally. So please don't think we are in any way unique with this, because we're not. But the 3 questions we should be asking ourselves is, what is our portfolio? Not just what do we own, but what are its characteristics? And what I mean by characteristics is its condition, the title, so ownership title, whether there are covenants attached to it that limit what we can do with it, lease terms, those sorts of things. So it's not just looking on a map or looking on the asset register and saying, yes, that's what we own or what we have an interest in. Second question, so first question, what is our portfolio? Second question, what is it there to do? And both at a portfolio, but also at an asset level. And question 3, is it doing these things? Now, rather than bringing you all in at this stage, perhaps it will be interesting sort of when we get to the discussion at the end. Are we able to answer those 3 questions? And I suspect the answer is no, but as I said, we are not alone there. But we need to bear in mind these are public assets being funded through public money, and therefore it is key that we can answer those questions and ensure that if we've got an asset that isn't doing those things, we challenge why do we have it, and that we then spend the money in the best place to achieve those objectives. Okay, so asset management, there are known as 6 Ps to good asset management. So firstly is the portfolio, so understanding of the portfolio. Second is purpose, so what's it there to do? Thirdly, performance, is it doing these things? So they're the 3 things that we sort of covered off on the earlier slide. In addition to that, policies, people, and processes. If you get all of those 6 things in place, then you can do good asset management. So asset management, what is it? It's the management of our physical assets to meet the service and financial objectives of the council. Therefore, why have an asset management plan? What an asset management plan would do is ensure the effective targeting of resources to have the greatest effect in raising performance, maximising value for money, and maximising the wider potential of assets. 3 themes within it: proactive asset management, investment and capital programs. So, for example, leisure assets, toilet assets, and actually driving those decisions. But also in terms of supporting wider objectives. And an example there could be, I know Rob Harrison mentioned earlier about sports clubs and the value of holding those sites, but actually, are we necessarily the right people, or the right organisation, or the best organisation to be holding those assets? And it comes back to what are the wider objectives. So for the sports and leisure sites, it is around providing those facilities for the community. But indeed, that could be done by a town council, some instances parish council, in exactly the same way it could be by us, as an example. So here is 5 top tips to preparing an asset management plan. So firstly, a bit of an analogy there. So the IKEA effect. An asset management plan is something we need to own and place value in the end result. That's why I call it the IKEA effect. I think we all know that if we have a vested interest in the end product, we ensure we want to get the best from it, and that is what I'm getting at there. And for me, it's not the document that's important, it is how this influences both the strategic and the day-to-day work. We've all seen documents that get prepared and then sit on a shelf and then get revisited periodically. This needs to be very much a living document that influences how we drive the estate forward, and then down on a more sort of asset by asset basis, it informs how we deliver the day-to-day work. Another top tip is a group activity: involve as many people as possible. And in this sense, I'm referring to both officers and elected members. Power of habit, it needs a shift. It's shift in mindset. It all comes from habit, for doing things in a particular way. Consistency beats intensity. It's about the delivery. It's not a race, but a journey. And the process in preparing is as important as the document itself. So those tips, they're all about making sure you have a document in place that is useful. You don't just do it to be able to tick the box and say you have an asset management plan in place. It's about producing a document that serves a really valuable purpose and engages with as many people as possible in terms of putting it into place. So, in terms of a new asset management plan, what I am proposing, and this is all obviously subject to debate at the end of this agenda item, but what I am proposing is a term of 5 years from 2024 to 2029 will tie in nicely with the new council plan to be adopted, and to be made up of 3 parts: the asset management plan, the strategy, and the action plan. I'll talk a bit about those 3 components in a minute. the action plan itself is to be organic and to be reviewed annually, because clearly that's the bit that flexes over time, and that action plan would then tie in very closely with not only my service plan for my service area, but also other service plans across the council. So,
Tim, can I just be there for one moment? Jenny, would you, I'm sorry to be rude, would you mind turning your camera off? Is that okay? Thank you so much indeed. Sorry to draw attention to it, if you wouldn't mind. Thank you very much. Sorry, Tim.
That's okay, Paul. All I can see presenting is is physically the slide deck. So you're obviously looking at other screens as well. So thank you, Paul. In terms of the asset management policy, so that's the first part of this. So that is the what. So that would cover council plan objectives, key challenges faced by EDDC. So what are we seeking to achieve through this? Linking in particularly with the financial resilience plan, but also, and we've picked up on this, Councillor Barlow was asking a question earlier about decarbonisation, and this and our asset management plan needs to include decarbonisation and climate change action as a key component within it, and in a very different way than it was being talked about when the previous asset management plan was developed back in 2014. But it also needs to set out the organisational context of the policy, so it needs to link it with all of, as I said, with all of the other adopted policies. So this particular slide now sets out, and again, this is particularly for AMF to review. It's a set of key policy principles which I've pulled together. And so I've tried to capture here why we hold assets. So all of the different reasons, whether it be for operational reasons, such as, for example, our corporate office stock and our depots, whether it is to generate a commercial income, like Ocean, for example, whether it's around health and well-being, so you could relate that to our leisure centres and our open spaces and our football pitches and rugby pitches, but also picking up around sharing of resources between us and other public sector bodies, but also intervening with market failure, and also references to placemaking. So I've tried to capture there why we might hold land and building assets. I'm not saying I've got it spot on, and I'll talk at the end of this slide deck about the next steps and engaging AMF in terms of helping develop this further. But that's sort of a first stab. And my argument would be, if we have assets that are not delivering against those, then we simply shouldn't be holding those assets. So I'm going to move on now to sort of high levels, I suppose, mission statement and what our estate will do. So I think the four key things is our estate within the new asset management plan needs to do four things. Firstly, starting on the left, benefit residents, businesses and visitors. I think that's fairly self-explanatory. Be managed corporately to support the council's services and delivering its council plan. Be run commercially to invest returns back into council services and the estate, and to ensure investments are made wisely, and to continue to improve the environmental performance. Moving on from the policy to the strategy. So the strategy is about how we will deliver the new asset management plan. That will cover off, and I don't think I need to read through the relevant bullet points here, but I'll just pick out a couple of sort of pertinent ones. So this is about delivery. So it's around overview of the asset portfolio. That can come from various different sources and contain various different bits of data. Around governance, around finances, around risks, measuring performance. For me, that one is probably the most important of all, and a number of others all listed on that slide deck. This particular slide, I suppose, goes back to the basics, really. So before some of the following slides, I'm going to sort of jump out slightly. But this one really is all about the basics. So to manage our current asset base, what is it we need to do? And we need to clearly understand our assets and how they perform. We need to dispose of poorly performing assets. We need to acquire new assets when a strong business case exists. And that could well be acquiring new assets in terms of placemaking aspirations. So linking in with a cabinet debate, which we had last week on a particular site. It's around maintaining and investing in our assets, making sure we're doing that in the right way, at the right time, and with the right assets. And also making assets more efficient, so seeking a commercial return where it is appropriate to do so. It links in with our asset register, which I've already shown you earlier on, or the public version of it. There's an area within our new proposed asset management plan which talks about undertaking rolling programs of options appraisals. And then I'm going to cover the three coloured ones, the green, red and yellow, a little bit shortly. But again, I think these are, I call them three protocols. These are three ways of doing things that within the new asset management plan, I believe we need to provide particular focus to. And then on the very bottom row, it's more the sort of the day-to-day stuff. So it's the health and safety compliance, debt management and those sorts of things. So if we go back now to the policy principles, as I said, that was my sort of stab on what those policy principles should be. As members, you might want us to tweak some of those. You might want us to add new ones in. You might want us to remove some of those. But what this particular slide deck is all about is performance. So whatever those policy principles that we decide are, or what they should be, then we have a way of assessing each and every asset against those. Okay, and this all comes back to the fact of if a particular asset isn't performing against these policy principles, then it begs the question, why are we holding the asset? And I've done this piece of work in other local authorities, and I'm telling you now, I'm absolutely certain you will over time come to assets that score really, really poorly. One, arguably on all of these, and it does then beg the question, why are we holding those assets? But it takes something like this to actually focus attentions and to pick those out. So so you have the policy principles, and then the challenge, which is, I suppose, the question. So does it achieve against that? And then you score, and a score of 4 for each of those categories is the highest score, where it exceeds the challenge. A score of 1 is the lowest, where it doesn't. And clearly we can't do this on each and every asset at day one, but within the action plan, we can produce a targeted approach. So we start at particular types, particular portfolios of assets, and then gradually work our way down. Having said that, this isn't a particularly difficult exercise to do. So you can make good progress with this relatively easily. Yeah, the 3 interrelated protocols that I referred to earlier. So that's your investment / capital program protocol, your disposal and acquisition protocol, and your commercialism let property protocol. This particular slide deck, this particular slide just explains a little more about what each of those mean. I'm not going to read it. I'm just going to pause on this screen just So you can cast your eye for it just to sort of see the sorts of the purpose of those protocols. Okay, almost there. So that then leads us through to the final part of an asset management plan, which is the actions. So the action plan. Here we would, or my proposal is that we would break it out into an operational action plan. So that could be around, for example, ensure that we update all our conditions surveys every X number of years, that we reduce our voids, those sorts of things. So that's sort of your operational actions, but also then your strategic actions. So around how you are going to implement those protocols, how, for example, you would implement the recently adopted £20 million Place and Prosperity Fund, and sort of similar sort of strategic actions. Linking all of that in with KPIs, so key performance indices, to then be able to measure success against that adopted asset management plan. All actions linking back to the asset management strategy objective. So they are the series of questions that I set out, just bear with me here. So these are the policy principles. All being SMART objectives with accountability and also resource implications against them. And now moving on to the final slide. So in terms of next steps, so we visited this in June of last summer. I'll stand by the decision. It wasn't the right time to produce the new asset management plan then, for a whole range of reasons. Now I believe genuinely is linking in with our financial resilience plan, but also our new council plan, our adopted leisure strategy, cultural strategy, and all those other documents. So I would like to, from an officer perspective, to make significant progress on this over the next 6 months, so that we can then be in a position to have a new asset management plan adopted during the summer of next year. What I am setting out here is a proposal for setting up a working group, so that the working group can meet in Part B and really get into the flesh of this, working with officers to make sure that jointly something comes forward back to Asset Management Forum that is fit for purpose. I'm suggesting possibly 2 of those project group meetings initially, and ideally for those meetings to take place in January and February next year, so that we can then report progress back in the March AMF. There's a question there which we'll come to at the discussion at the end around which members are to sit on that. Clearly, I'll be providing monthly updates, as I do on all key projects, to Councillor Hayward as portfolio holder in my monthly portfolio holder reports. And I think, as I've said, hopefully to be adopted during the summer of next year. If it's okay, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I hate it presenting and not being able to see any response back from anyone. So I'm going to stop presenting if it's okay, and then open up to question and debate. And I can see faces again.
Thank you, Tim.
And you're still there.
The first hand I have up is from Peter. Over to you, Peter.
Thank you, Chair. There's a few little, this is partly previous agenda item. I guess it's 3 parts. At Winters Lane, we have the Winters Lane Park, the playing area, and we've also got the Scout Hut, which I believe the hut itself belongs to the Scouts, but we own the land that they're built on. And then alongside that, we've got the redundant toilet block, which has been stripped out, and that's let out to the Scouts as a store. So is that, how many assets is that? And how we perceive those assets. The toilet block is a very small two. There's a ladies and a gents one either side. It's a small building, and we're letting that out to the scouts. So I don't know how all that fits into all the things we've been talking about. And a further comment, I think there was an awful lot of reading there, so I hope we get a chance to have all that sent to us so we can properly read through all the stuff, because I couldn't keep up with what all the stuff was getting sent. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Tim, just before I ask you or Rob to come back on that, good morning, Charlotte. Nice for you to join us. Just the same question as you. Do you have any declarations of interest that you've noted from the agenda that you wish to give?
Thank you. And I'm sorry I'm late. I was late joining. No declarations of interest from me. Thank you.
Thank you. Just before I go to Tim and Rob, can I ask respectfully all members, when we are having these discussions, to bear in mind that some of our leases, all of our leases, have some degree of commercial confidentiality. So please, if you can, when you're asking your questions, bear that in mind, because this is a publicly accessible meeting. And our leases are between the district council and those individuals. So thank you very much, all members, for when you do ask your questions. Tim, Rob, are you able to answer the one from Councillor Faithful?
Yeah, I'll answer Councillor Faithful, Chair. I think rather than getting into specifics, what I would say is in terms of the asset register, which I'm sure you're already aware it was there, but no doubt following this meeting, you can go back and revisit it and see what it shows for those particular assets. I would expect there were to be 3 separate building assets. There might well be 3 separate land assets, but sometimes you'll have one land asset with multiple different buildings on it. Okay, so there'd be 3 building assets, but maybe only 1 or 2 land assets, depending upon how closely located those individual building assets are. Councillor Faithful, did you perhaps want to, because there's obviously a more detailed discussion, I suspect, that sort of follows on from that. So did you perhaps want to review the public asset register on those items, and then perhaps contact Rob Harrison or myself for any specific questions?
Yeah, well, it's just trying to get a head round what, because we've got this title of other assets on the previous agenda item, and it's like, well, what are they? You know, we such a vague idea of what it is we're talking about.
But again, so Councillor Faithful, you will be able to look up for Ottery St Mary, which you've always been able to do. You'll be able to look up for Ottery St Mary, filter it by Ottery St Mary, and you will see all of those assets of all of those different categories listed with their addresses and details. So perhaps, Councillor Faithful, have a look at that, and then please do then come back to Rob, or come back to myself in the first instance, if you like, and we'll answer any specific questions.
Okay. Thank you very much, Peter, for your question. Councillor Hall.
Sorry if I missed this. I had to take a call. I agree, Tim, with what you're trying to do with reviewing these assets and making sure that the assets which are under our control are the best for us and actually the best for the community, whether it remains with us. But of course, there is a certain amount, particularly with sports and social clubs, which have a social and well-being value. How do you plan on trying to assess that and its importance? Thanks.
Yeah, good point, Councillor Hall. So absolutely. So that's picked up in a number of the policy principles that I ran through. So there was one specifically on health and well-being, but there were others that would also sort of pick up that in a roundabout way around use, around intervention as well. So it is picked up there. And just to be clear to all members, performance of local authority assets is not just financial performance. The financial performance is in some ways the easy part to do. It's all of the other the benefits of why we hold these assets. But believe me, we will at some point come across an asset that doesn't necessarily achieve that in terms of financial or non-financial. We will start scratching our head thinking, why do we own this particular asset? And the answer will probably be because we've always done it and we've never questioned it.
Can I come back, Chairman?
Of course.
Yeah, Tim, sorry, as I said, I did take a call, so I probably missed that bit. I did have a second question, which relates back to partly to the previous agenda item. So with these rentals and leases, are they done on a full repair and maintenance lease, or are we liable, or is there a mixture? Because it does really, the answer to that, impact on what I consider to be the viability of some of our assets.
Chair, can I perhaps suggest Rob Harrison comes in on this? He can give you a bit more detail.
Of course, thank you. Rob, if you could.
Yeah. I mean, our leases, generally there's a mix in terms of lease terms. So yeah, we'll have some which are let on fully repair and insurance terms, some which are internal repairing. The business centre, for example, is let on effectively a serviced office basis, so their rent sort of includes all the utilities and things like that. So there is a mix. Obviously, we try and make that as fit for purpose as possible. A lot of it will depend on what the basis of the property is, what the length of the lease is, and things like that, and what's most suitable in terms of what the actual deal is. But yeah, there's a mix across the board.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Rob. I think just before I bring in Councillor Barlow and then Councillor Fitzgerald and Councillor Brown, I think that issue there, Matt, comes to the crux of what Tim is proposing, is that within the constraints of the AMF meetings that we have, there isn't really that opportunity, and certainly because they are confidential and relate to assets that impact on people's lives, you can't really get into the nitty-gritty, the minutiae of them. But the principle of having a working party to work towards an AMP is that working party can drill down into those things and can look at whether it's fully maintained, serviced, whether there's a social benefit, a commercial benefit. And I think that's the direction of travel that we're hoping for, that it's just not possible to do in an AMF meeting, not because we're trying to exclude the public or hide something from the public, but they are commercially sensitive issues. And any discussion that we have which may potentially throw up, well, that's a possible candidate for disposal, that's rented to someone. And they may, that's not something it's not applicable, it's not relevant to do in public, hence the reference to the Part B part. Councillor Barlow, over to you. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you very much, Chair. Brilliant. I mean, Tim, seriously, I don't do it very often, but this is exactly the sort of thing that I have been going on or trying to go on for some time. Certainly, Sidmouth, we have a scoring system on any of the leases we do. We don't have as many properties as you do, but we think it's important that at the end of the day, we split it into basically two: investment and economy, and then social benefit ones. And the ones that can deliver social benefit are not meant to make a profit. We understand that. But the idea is that if you can get your assets that do make a profit, your kiosks, your cafes, your other bits and pieces you've got that actually are meant to make a profit, they should be commercially equal, and we should know, and we should have more detail on whether they're full repairing. As Matt's point is there, Councillor Hall's point there is that at the end of the day, unless you know if something is full repairing, etc., you don't know if the rent is fair or not. So I think it's very important that we sweat the assets, as the chair of the meeting said, sweat our assets where we can and where we should, to enable us to provide more social benefit on the ones that aren't meant to make a profit. And certainly this is a good way to go forward. I don't sit on this committee, so I very much doubt if anyone will allow me to come on the working group, but I would very much like to. I do think that things like your seaside rentals, which goes back a little bit to the previous one, I know I've questioned some of them, and I'm not going to bring up any figures here, but I've questioned some of the ones because even though you've gone out for outside expertise, It's a very, very, very specialist market. There aren't many of them that are ever come on the market and available, and they are usually very valuable because they attract huge amounts of people. And it doesn't matter what town they're in; it's the volume of people that you need to make these businesses profitable. So therefore, you can charge higher rents and then get more money for the social benefit. So I'd just like to say I'm really, really glad that there seems to be a little bit of acceptance that even though I'm always told it's not a business, it's not a business. I know it's not a business. I've been doing it in the town level for 13 years. I know it's not a business, but what you need to do is have business ideas coming forward to enable social benefit. Okay, it's like a bit of communism, but at the end of the day, a bit of capitalism at the same time. It's blending the two and making best use of both. So if I can, I would love to sit on it. I would love to help out everything. I've got lots of other little questions, but they're really pretty irrelevant. And if this is run properly, like you're suggesting, then that should take care of all of these things. Thank you very much. Well done.
Thank you, Councillor Barlow. I think also one of the underlying points here is up till now, local authorities have, this comes back to the point you raised, Tim, about that the questions aren't asked. They haven't been asked. And I think that's perhaps symptomatic of how local authorities have been. You don't have to ask those questions, you just own them. You own the asset. Why would anyone ever challenge it? But the world is changing, local authorities are changing, finance is changing. So we are going to have to ask those questions. Just before I come to Councillor Fitzgerald and Councillor Brown, Councillor Barlow, that sounded to me like certainly a nomination from you for Vice Chair of the working group. And if that's the case, I'll be delighted to talk to you about when we do form the membership of it, and we'll come to that at the end about the process for doing that. You and I can have a chat about that because I know you have experience in this in the commercial sector, and we need to have that hybrid working between commerciality and, as you say, social impact. So,
but love to. The only thing is I am away for January, I'm afraid. But I will happily do Zoom meetings on holiday at any time because I get very bored on holiday. Thank you.
Give with one hand, take with the other. All right, we'll talk. Councillor Fitzgerald, over to you.
Thank you. Well, I'm afraid Councillor Barlow has pretty much taken the words out of my mouth. I think it's really exciting and fantastic that you're doing this piece of work. And I would have loved to have been on the working group, but unfortunately, I'm having a baby next month, so timing is terrible for me personally. So I would excuse myself from that, but I really look forward to the reports from that and what comes out of it. I think the only thing that I did have to add, because the well-being versus financial benefits has been sort of discussed by other members, is just a thought that the social benefit items, the things that may not be, and I'm thinking particularly about sports and community clubs, because they have a social and community benefit doesn't necessarily mean, presumably, that district council needs to keep hold of them. I think we need to recognise that parish councils also are very much conscious of the services that are providing social and community benefits, at least as much as we are at district council, and therefore I think that we should keep an open mind about whether or not we need to continue to own them outright if they provide a social benefit, or whether or not we should consider entrusting that to the parish councils, because I certainly can't imagine them wanting to get rid of any of these assets just for that reason. And I also understand that a lot of them are very small parts of our portfolio, and whilst for good reason we haven't gone into costs on this call, I can imagine that they could be very labour intensive for district council to be continuing to own that piece. So just a thought that I wanted to share with this group. But otherwise, yeah, thank you very much.
All right, thank you. I think you've raised a very valid point there. As much as it's likely that some members from Exmouth won't know much about the value of an Axminster asset, and vice versa. And wherever you are in the district, you really won't know, because we are ward members. We specialise. We have in-depth knowledge of our wards, and so whilst I'm sure you won't have a huge amount of time on your hands, and congratulations, it hasn't happened yet, but it will do in due course. The asset register is available on our website, so I would invite you and every other ward member to look at that list and then think to yourself, okay, well, I know that asset. I know how it's used, how people regard it. I know its condition. I drive past it every day. And if you can feed that back into the working group, even if you can't attend the working group meetings, your input and that of every member will be really important, because the officer base, they know them because they manage them. But the working group can't possibly know the ins and outs of everyone. So if every ward member can feed in their observations, and even if they do it in reverse and say, well, they're all fine apart from these 2, these 3, these 4, that'll be really helpful, and that will help guide what we're going to do. So thank you very much, Charlotte. Jenny, just before I come to you, Tim, you've just popped your hand up. Do you want to respond to that?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just briefly, the working group, I suppose, just want to manage expectations really. The working group over the next couple of months, sort of into spring, is about developing an asset management plan, the policy, the strategy, and the action plan. Rather than jumping into specific assets, and this means doing this for this asset, because what we need to do, we need to have those key principles agreed and our methodology and our approach, and then from that through the action plan will be a sort of a rolling cycle of options appraisals where we look at those specifics. But there's really, the focus needs to be on the sort of strategic direction. What are we seeking to achieve? How we're going to pull this data together, rather than necessarily sitting there at that stage saying, well, that means keep that property, get rid of that property, because that will be, once you have an asset management plan adopted, that will then enable you to make informed decisions based on your adopted policy, if that makes sense.
No problem at all. That's absolutely noted. Thank you. So
I thought we were doing the whole lot in 2 weeks. I mean, 2 months.
If only it were that simple.
Thank you very much, Tim. Jenny, over to you.
Just to say, reiterate what Councillor Barlow had said, and also Tim, that was absolutely brilliant. I actually feel very excited and very positive. I've been very down reading some of the 2014 Asset Management Committee meetings, and it seemed like all the time we're trying to reinvent the wheel. But it seems now we've found the wheel and we're going to put it on a vehicle. So well done.
Amazing. That's a great analogy. Thank you very much, Jenny. Thank you for that. Do any remaining members outside of the forum or inside the forum wish to add anything more? Okay, so, well, on that basis, I think on this particular item, if we note the report, Tim, thank you for bringing all this together. I think it gives us a direction we're after. In terms of the membership, I think that's something we need to work out how we bring that together. So, Tim, do you want to come back on that?
Yeah, and I might bring Debbie in on this as well, if that's okay, because I'm sure Debbie's given this some thought. But I'd quite like us, if we can, to get to a position whereby we are able to appoint that working group.
Frozen there, Tim.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
I can hear you.
I've just switched off my video. Hopefully that should help. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. I'd like us, if possible, to get going with this working group sooner rather than later, notwithstanding obviously Councillor Barlow's availability in January. So I think a recommendation possibly delegates to Councillor Hayward as chair to appoint that working group, which would then meet in part B. It would be, I'm visualizing something quite informal, just a small group of members and officers, and then obviously we report back publicly through Asset Management Forum. So Debbie, presumably that would still need, because we're not a decision-making group, this group, so presumably that would need a recommendation to Cabinet, would it?
No, my understanding, Tim, is that the Asset Management Forum can agree now to delegate that work to the chair to set up that membership. So ideally, you want some membership from the Asset Management Forum itself, and the chair might be sufficient in that regard, but there might be another member that you want to pull from the forum. And then obviously, again, depending on the number of members that you want to see on this working group, if you've got nominations and there are certain skill sets that you want to take advantage of, then yeah, pull together what you need. But I would suggest that the forum need to agree that they're happy to leave that in the hands of their chair to sort out, and then get underway in the new year as soon as possible.
Thank you, Debbie, for that. Well, I can see, Jenny, you seem very keen, so I'm be delighted to involve Jenny in this. Ian's already indicated he's happy to attend, subject to his availability elsewhere. Matt, there's another. So that's 4 of us. Perhaps if Forum's happy to delegate that to myself, I've got some names already there. I'll give it some thought over the next 24 hours. And if you're happy to delegate to me, I can liaise with Debbie and Tim and make sure anything procedural is dealt with accordingly. Todd?
I'm happy to propose that if you like, Chair.
Thank you very much.
Paul, I'm sorry, Chair. I wonder if, in terms of the group, it would be useful, I think, picking up on some comments. I think maybe there were different councillors earlier, about the sort of health and well-being and the non-financial element. So Councillor Hall, from an economy perspective, obviously yourself from an assets and finance perspective, it'd be quite good to have a cabinet representation from more of the sort of the health, well-being, the sort of the non-financial side, if possible. Just a suggestion to get that balance.
Thank you very much indeed. I can take that on board. So we've had a recommendation from Todd. Ian, you've got your hand up again.
Oh, it's just a question. I wondered if Tim had a preference for the size of this working group, rather than before you end up with 22 people, which I always find is very difficult to make any sort of decision.
Won't be that, Ian. I'll for you of that.
5 maximum.
Smaller the better. Joking aside, I'd sort of envisaged probably about 6 councillors, something in that region, but probably not much bigger than that. But clearly, it's obviously for the chair to decide.
Lovely, thank you very much, Tim. So, Matt, are you happy to second Todd's recommendation? Yeah, thank you very much. Well, there we are. There's only 3 of us here, so all those in favour? Unanimous. There you are, Debbie. Thank you very much.
That's great. Thank you, Chair.
Lovely. And thank you, Tim, for that suggestion. I'll bear that in mind as well. Brilliant. Okay, so right. Well, I think with no further questions, that does bring our meeting to an end. Thank you to all the officers who presented and who are still with us, and those who've departed and gone elsewhere. Thank you, Tim, as lead, for bringing this all forward. Yeah, in which case then that brings our meeting to an end, and I'd like to thank everyone, including any members of the public watching online, for taking part. Can I remind all those present that the supporting officer will confirm when the meeting is no longer being recorded or going live, and until then your comments will be live to the public, so please no profanity or anything else accordingly.